Hi everyone, Velvet here, and I have some stories for you today. But before we get started, can you please do me a huge favor and like, comment, and subscribe? It'll really help the channel out, and it'll get you more videos like this every day. Let's get started. And our first one comes from Disastrous Front 72-5. Am I the beehole for pretending I didn't know I was adopted to make my teacher embarrassed? Posting on a throwaway, because there's enough info you could figure out on my main if you know me. Okay, so I'm in high school, and this was in my English class. Our real teacher is on paternity leave, and we have a long-term substitute. So yesterday, she was telling us she wants us to write personal memoirs about something very important in our lives, and she goes on about listing various examples for different students. She told me I could write about being adopted and how I felt when my parents told me. Now, I must have made a face then, because I am not adopted. I have two dads, but they had me through surrogacy. So technically, there was a legal adoption for my non-bio dad, but one of my dads is my bio dad, and my bio mom is my other dad's sister, who donated an egg to carry me. I think it would be a stretch to call me adopted. Also, the sub has no basis to even know any of this, because as much as I've written in class, I just say I have two dads. Anyway, she's kind of old and doesn't like when we talk too loud, which to her is talking at a normal indoor level on group assignments. Make any normal faces and whatever. She basically called me out on making a face and was like, OP, if you don't want to write about being adopted, you can choose another important topic to your life. Maybe how you help your dad at home. One of my dads has cerebral palsy and is mostly blind from optic neuropathy. I did write briefly about that in the intro assignment with our other teacher, so he must have left him with her to get to know the class. I was confused, so I said, I'm not adopted. She just puts her hand over her heart and goes, oh, honey. So now, my brain, which was lagging, caught up, and I realized she's only thinking I'm adopted because I have two dads. So at this point, I'm like, whatever, I'll just play into it. So I look upset and I'm like, I don't know. Was I adopted? She's kind of panicking a bit and telling everyone to just start writing something. A lot of my friends are laughing under their breath because they know I'm not adopted. So she's telling everyone to quiet down, and it's not funny, and to get to work. I'm like, what do you mean I'm adopted? She's trying to tell me not to worry about it, and to just ask my dads when I get home. And I'm like, how can I be adopted? So she sends me to the school counselor, and I told her this story basically, and she gave off the vibe of, that was a shitey thing to do, to mess with the sub. That way, I could have just explained I'm not adopted, because I made her worry unnecessarily, and embarrassed her. I don't think parts of my life are up to her to decide what I get to share or not. And I feel like it's on her if she feels embarrassed for assumptions she made. Maybe that makes me the beehole. TLDR. Teacher assumed I'm adopted because I have two dads. I pretend to be upset like I'm learning it for the first time from her that I'm adopted. By the way, I am not adopted. Dad's had me through surgery. Hi, OP. I don't think you're the beehole. I actually thought this was funny. This reminds me of a movie I watched. I forgot where it was, but you could clearly tell the kid is adopted, and the kid's like, I'm adopted? It feels like that kind of vibe. Personally, this feels like something I would have done growing up. I totally would have played into it. I mean, she set you up perfectly to play into it. And you're right. She shouldn't just assume things, you know what I mean? She went there and it's on her to get embarrassed, like you said. She knows nothing of the situation. She should have just said, hey, write something personal about you instead of trying to single people out, because that's kind of what she was doing. I mean, I guess she wasn't trying to be mean about singling them out, but she was singling people out, and yeah, that's not her business to start telling people that you have two dads and that you're adopted. Don't just assume that sort of thing. And I don't know what's up with that counselor. If I was a counselor, I would have been, chuckling, because that's funny. Like, well, you weren't rude to her or anything like that. She was hoisted by her own petard, I guess. Okay, so it looks like I was wrong about the teacher not wanting to be a jerk. We have Desert Song La La say, not the beehole. Teacher is completely inappropriate. Good for you mirroring back her BS. The counselor had a crappy perspective. She and the teacher are not respecting you as a person, including your privacy. What about your teacher blatantly asking you about conveying pity? Your supposed ignorance. School staff should not state personal life details or institutions in class. This is a breach of your privacy. You and your family should submit a complaint and slash meet with the principal slash teacher or counselor. There is no stopping this person. Imagine her asking others. You can write about being homeless, or your GMA's past, twins' death in the ice last year. Imagine if topics were stated out loud in class for her to write about. Best to you. Then OP writes back with, yeah, that's basically what she was doing. Like, for example, she told my friend to write about what it's like immigrating from India, and told another kid to write about having a sibling who survived childhood cancer. The sibling goes to our high school. The school, there's like a little plaque for her in the office they put during Cancer Month a couple years ago. Stuff like that. So it just seems like this lady's a bit of a bee. And OP, you are not the beehole, she is. And our next one comes from OK Hovercraft 286. Am I the beehole for informing my sister-in-law that she and my niece were the only people who did not see her daughter's response coming? Sister-in-law married my brother 10 years ago. They each had a daughter, both 18 now, from different relationships. My niece was really excited by the idea of a sibling and a bigger family. She used to ask her dad to give her a sibling when she was still in preschool, and while she did stop asking, the wish still remained. The fact that she thought stepniece was the coolest and best person ever made the excitement even more palpable. But this was clear from the very early on that stepniece did not want to view my niece in the same light. The girls were very different, and very early on, my niece became very demanding of stepniece's time. And sister-in-law and my brother were very eager to see them spend time together, so they encouraged niece in her demandingness, and would scold stepniece for wanting to put friends over her sister. I became concerned about how demanding my niece was being. She wouldn't even ask stepniece if she wanted to do something. She would just tell her. And neither my brother or sister-in-law batted an eye. Stepniece would say no, and my niece would tell her no was not an option. So I spoke about my concerns to my brother, and he told me he knew it was going to push his stepdaughter away in the future, but he also knew how much my niece wanted a sister, and how much his wife wanted her daughter to accept her as a sister, so he wasn't going to get involved. A confrontation happened between sister-in-law and stepniece a couple of years ago that the rest of us were made aware of. Sister-in-law told stepniece that she would need to get used to having her sister in her life, because when she grows up, she's going to need to have to make time for her, and this is good practice for that. Stepniece told sister-in-law that she could just not see her at all, and sister-in-law said that wasn't a possibility, and she would always be a part of the family. Stepniece turned 18 in July, and she moved out of my brother's and sister-in-law's house, and has not been to visit or kept in touch with them since. My niece has tried to talk to her over the DM or call her, but she's just ignored her, and maybe even blocked her in places. The only people this seems to surprise was sister-in-law and my niece. My niece cried for days about it and said she didn't understand, while sister-in-law grumbled for months about it. But during Christmas, it was at an all-time bad. She showed up to the family celebration we had on the 30th, and was blasting her daughter to everyone, and saying how surprising her actions were. A lot of the family moved away from her, but when she sat down next to me to do her vent, I told her she and my niece were the only ones surprised, and the rest of us saw her daughter's actions coming a mile off. I brought up that stepniece even had told her what she'd do 2 years ago, and she still didn't believe her. Sister-in-law called me insensitive and told me nobody could have known a teenage girl was serious when she was having her little temper tantrums. She said most kids would never want to be away from their siblings or their families like that, and it's cruel for me to lie and to claim otherwise. Am I the beehole? OP, as someone who has siblings, you are not the beehole. I love my siblings. I would do almost anything for my siblings. I would take a bullet for my siblings. I've already, thought that out, and yeah, I would do it. But yeah, forcing someone to be with someone who's basically dominating them is they're never gonna like that person. Nobody wants to be controlled, especially by someone on the same level as them. You know what I mean? Like, kids get a parent telling them what to do because they're higher ranking than them. I don't know how else to put it, but you know what I mean, right? Your sister sounds like she's delusional. Personally, no, your sister-in-law. Sorry, sister-in-law sounds like she's delusional. Your brother sounds like a little baby wimp. Like, he knows what's gonna happen and he doesn't step in to try to fix this. Why is he not trying to, be a good father to both of those girls? Why is he letting wouldn't get just like manipulated like that. And it's also so frustrating when you see someone acting like a jerk and you know they're a jerk and then you call them out on being a jerk and they're like, what do you mean I was a jerk? You're a jerk. That I'm perfect. There's no way I was wrong. Of course this I'm right, and smushing those girls together is going to, I'm surprised. Why did she leave? First of all, that's a smart little girl. She left at 18, so it must have been really bad. And yeah, years of your life being controlled by someone would want to make anyone run and get out from under that person's thumb. And that whole siblings thing, yeah, what I was saying, I love them, like I said, but yeah, I don't need to spend every minute with my siblings. And what is it? You gotta leave. You gotta what is it? You gotta stay away or something like that to make the person miss you. If you're with them all the time, they're gonna get sick of you. I looked in the comments, and yeah, natural garbage 7674 says it best to me. Not the beehole. Your sister-in-law was so focused on getting her happily ever after that she turned into the evil stepmother for her own daughter. And, worse, she was flat out told the consequences of her own actions, and she's still all surprised that it came true. Not to mention, there's no way your brother kept his mouth shut all those years unless she already shut him down. She doesn't get to rewrite history or paint her daughter as the bad guy because she failed. Well said, and I agree. And our final one comes from Environmental Wave 740. Am I the beehole for refusing to answer my in-laws when they call me Florence? My legal name is Flora, not Florence. My parents chose to just use Flora when I was born, and I always liked my name a lot. But for most of my life, I've been Flory to most people. Even at work, my coworkers call me Flory. I will answer to either Flora or Flory, and some people prefer to call me Flora, which I'm totally fine with. But ever since I first met my in-laws 2 years ago, they've been so weird about my name. They started by asking me 100 times if my name was actually Florence. Then they asked me why my parents chose to give me a name, Flora, as a legal name, instead of the full name Florence, and call me Flora instead. But what really bothers them is the fact that I use Flory, and somewhat prefer it over Flora. They told me they cannot understand a professional woman using such a juvenile sounding name. They said every time they hear my name, they expect a 6-year-old and not a 28-year-old woman. My husband has been wonderful about shutting them down, and telling them to stop, and calling them out on being disrespectful. We have distanced ourselves from his parents due to this. But now, whenever we see them at family functions, they call me Florence. First time I really hoped they were talking to someone else, but no, it was me. My husband told me to ignore them if I wanted, and so I did. My husband's siblings all think their parents are being ridiculous, and all of them call me Flory in an effort to piss off their parents. Some used to call me Flora and Flory, but even Flora doesn't exist to them now. We were all together for a New Year's party, and my husband's parents brought some friends. They and their friends all called me childish, among other things, for refusing to answer to Florence. My husband got so annoyed, he went over to tell them they were being ridiculous when Florence isn't even my name. They told him Florence could be seen as just another nickname, and I'm being unreasonable and rude. I felt very called out, but honestly, the anger and the way they talked about me made me question if I'm being a tad unreasonable, and if I shouldn't just let them call me Florence. Am I the beehole? Okay, OP, you are not the beehole. First things first, though, it's nice you got a good husband who has your back and wants to protect you. But you are not the beehole, OP. Okay, someone purposely calling you by the wrong name is a very common sign of disrespecting the person, and that's what they are doing to you, OP. You should not give in and let them call you whatever they want, because they're doing that to manipulate you. Now, I don't know what their deal is or why they're even doing this. This is such a weird thing to me, by fighting with you over a name, but they need to respect you, and your husband is doing a good job. But honestly, it's getting to the point where if I were you, I would just cut them out, because they obviously are pricks and they associate with pricks. Bringing over their friends to mock you like that. No, OP, do not let them call you whatever they want. Even when I was a young child, I made sure to tell people to call me by my name, because my name has a long version and a short version, and growing up it always changed how I felt. And I made sure, even when I was a kid, to let them know you call me by the name I want to be called by. As you should, OP. If you like, Flory, you stick with Flory. I think Flory's cute, and I don't think a 6-year-old girl. I just think a name. So, no, OP, you are not the beehole. Do not let those people walk all over you like that. Thank you so much for staying with me to the end of this video. can you please do what I said in the beginning and like, comment, and subscribe? It will really help the channel out, and it'll get you more videos like this every day. Velvet out.